Criminals may have defrauded California of nearly $2 billion of unemployment and stimulus funds during the pandemic. That's an estimate from Bank of America, which manages the state's benefits systems. And lawmakers are demanding answers from the lender about how this could happen. Bloomberg News finance reporter Linan Nguyen has been following this story, and she joins me now on the phone to explain. Linan, that is just an eye-popping amount of potential fraud in the state. What happened here?
Hi, Tim. Yes, this is an eye-popping number, and there are two ways that the state may have been defrauded here. First of all, there may be sort of fraudulent enrollments, which is people who, aren't entitled to the benefits or are faking their identities to sort of get funds from the state. And then there's fraud on cards, which is people who are kind of hacking into the debit cards that have been distributed in order to take funds off those cards. But, the state has asked Bank of America to freeze more than 345,000 accounts in September because of potential fraud concerns. So it's an eye-popping number of, potential fraudulent accounts and an eye-popping number of funds that may have been defrauded.
Well, where was the weak link here, based on your reporting? Does this fall more on the bank, or does it fall more on the state?
Well, I think the overlying context here is that we have, a major pandemic going on in which, legislators really wanted to get money out the door to people who needed it. So that's the main context. This was done in a rush, probably for the right reasons, because there's a huge sort of crisis that's affecting a lot of California residents. But at the same time, clearly there were lapses in the checks in terms of, enrollments and people who basically weren't entitled to the money or who, had false identities to try and claim some of these funds. So the bank says that most of the issues actually originated in the enrollment process, which is, people who shouldn't get the money applied for it. And it cites, situations in which sort of out-of-state people or even babies or centenarians were trying to claim funds here. And it actually flagged more than 640,000 instances of potential fraud to the state.
What about when it comes to the folks who actually legitimately wanted and needed this money? What did the bank do in order to make sure that they got it and their accounts weren't frozen?
So, Tim, this is still being sorted out. This mess is kind of still affecting some legitimate claimants who obviously are the ones who really suffer here. These are people who need to pay their bills and are, actually legitimately entitled to these funds. And you'll see a lot of reporting about people who are kind of either locked out from the state system or the bank system or are getting the runaround and can't really get a straight answer. But what Bank of America has said that it's doing in conjunction with the state authorities is, basically putting thousands of people into call centers who can try and verify these identities and try to get the money out the door to the people who genuinely need it.
So are these the extent of the new protections that the bank and the state are putting into place to make sure this doesn't happen again? We do know that Democrats and Republicans are trying to come to an agreement where more aid will be given to Americans. And if that does happen, how do they prevent it from happening in the future?
Well, the state is already talking about doing a direct deposit scheme, which most other states already have. And obviously, the extent of this fraud, I think, will kickstart that process pretty fast because no one wants to see any more fraud happen. So I think there really has been a fire lit under the sort of legislators as well as the bank to make sure that future problems don't happen. This is always a concern for pandemic stimulus that, it was open to fraud. And in this particular case, it's a huge number. And so I think there's going to be a lot of people looking at this and looking at the failures and trying to understand how it happened and also really trying to prevent it from happening in the future.
Bloomberg News finance reporter Linan Nguyen, thanks as always for your time and for joining us on Quick Take.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quicktake now for insight in an instant.